Hello, welcome to part 5 of our game making tutorial for beginners. I'm wearing a suit because it's very important to be formally dressed when programming and to have a glass of wine at all times so that you can drink it while it's compiling. And last time we did a bunch of stuff to make our game take it beyond like just being a single screen thing that only runs in a window. Mine is running in a window because I can't record when it's full screen for dumb reasons. And we also made it that when we press escape it quits. But it's ugly as hell right now, isn't it? For one thing, I forgot to, when we did our game event, we set up all this screen stuff in order to demonstrate the difference between ports and views. I multiplied our view by 2, which I actually didn't want to do. So let's get rid of that. I also said I was only doing that background with the hideous big black crosses as a kind of testing thing. So let's edit that and let's change, I'm going to change the canvas size to something more reasonable, like 512 by 512, which is actually what I suggested you do in the first place. Because you don't, what the fuck? I think I multiplied it by 512%. It's very important to pay attention to which box you're typing things into and to uncheck the keep aspect ratio button. There we go, that's a bit more reasonable. And I'm just going to delete all that, and let's find a nice, I'm going to do like a, I make everything slate blue, my website's slate blue, that's about it I guess, but how would that be? That's quite nice. Don't want anything too garish, I might make it a bit darker than that, and then use the spray paint tool and do some like, I'm just going to do some like blobs. I don't know what they will be exactly, but I don't want to do grass because that's, I mean, not that we're trying to be original and interesting here, but I'm just a bit sick of looking at badly drawn grass because there's a lot of it around. So we're going to do something. Someone said that my things look like viruses, so I'm kind of rolling with that a little bit. And maybe this, I'm sort of in the back of my head is the cell stage of spore, which I think I mentioned before, and making it look like, I don't know, like a primordial ooze. I don't know. I don't care what the theme of this game is or what we're doing in it, but that's immediately a lot nicer than it was, so that's good. Next thing I'd like to do is, actually I want to change this bullet sprite. I'm going to do a bunch of like things that will just make the game a bit nicer. I made this triangular so that we could see which direction it was facing, but actually we don't care about that. That was just another thing for testing, so I'll make it hideous. Let's get the eraser and make that less weird. I'll just make it a ball, I guess. That's fine. I just want it to be a bit bigger really so you can see it better. And I wonder if we could do Rhys Jenkins that showed his game last time. He had kick for the player, and it'd be quite fun to do something like that ourselves because that would really improve the feel of the game. So if we wanted our player, when he fires, to be knocked back, we would put it in the firing code here that we wrote earlier. And what do we want? We want to move. First, let's decide how much kick we're going to have, and we'll just say kick equals. Let's think. We move 10 pixels of frame. Let's make it 5. And then, how do we want to add this? We want to move ourselves away from the direction we're firing. So we know what direction we're firing, it's our image angle. So let's actually, I'm just going to write this all out as variables. It might not be strictly necessary to do this, but it's good to be totally clear about what we're doing. We want our kick direction, the direction the kick pushes us in, to be not our image angle, but the opposite. So if you want to find the reverse of a direction, you add 180 to it. And will it be okay with that? It probably will be. If anything goes wrong, what we might need to do is make sure that this number is under 360, because we might be telling it to, our direction should be 570. I think GameMaker just figures that out, but you can get into trouble if you start. If I was to then say like, if kick direction is less than 90 and expect to get any like that range of angles and always detect those correctly, I would mess it up because it's possible that our number could be over 360 and have looped round a full revolution and gone back to be the equivalent of 45 degrees, but not actually not 45 degrees in number. So blissfully, we don't have to worry about that yet. I think that's just going to work. And want to know what the how much we should move in the x direction, how much we should move in the y direction. So we're going to modify our x direction, our x position, by we're going to add to our x direction, and we're going to add length in the direction of x of the kick amount in the kick direction. And that's a super useful term. It's not, what we're doing here is not massively important, but that term is super important, and you'll use it for everything, because if you want to add two like speeds together, let's say we might already be moving rapidly in one direction, and when we have the kick, we don't want it to take away our velocity. We want to add to we just want it to add that velocity in a different direction. So kick is maybe a sort of esoteric case for this, but if you imagine you're running along and you get hit by a car, this is maybe a dark example. Your forwards velocity doesn't stop, you get knocked to the side, but you've still got some forwards velocity, and so if we were simulating that, we'd need to know the car wouldn't just move you in the same direction as the car, it would add that velocity to your current velocity, and then you'd see what the result was. So it would be die. But to do that, you need to break it down into x and y components, because those are the two things that GameMaker kind of deals with on the most fundamental level. So instead of just setting our x speed or setting our or h speed and v speed, we are going to add something to our x coordinate, and we don't know what direction we're going in. Like we've got that stored in a variable, but we ourselves don't know whether that's positive in the x direction. We don't know if it's negative in the x direction. It could be 0 in the x direction. If you got knocked exactly vertically, then the x component would be nothing. So given the angle, and given how far we're moving, we're asking it, how much is that in x? And the word for that is length in the direction of x, length dir x. And for y, it's exactly the same thing, but for y. So we just type in y equals y plus length in the direction of y of the kick in the kick direction. If you're wondering why it's plus, like intuitively you might think that kick is knocking you backwards, so maybe we want minus, but minus might not be backwards, minus might be forwards, minus might be up. The reason it's plus is you just we've already know that the direction we're going in is the opposite of the way we're firing, so we do want to move in that direction. So the plus is about, yes, we do want to move in that direction. Another way we could have done it is we could have just left image angle there and put image angle in here, and then put minus. I find that a bit less intuitive. I find it much clearer, for my own sake, reading my code back to say, okay, we're going to do kick now, here's the amount of kick, here's the direction of the kick, and then this will always just be amount in the direction. You don't have to kind of worry about the minus or the plus. I just always leave it as plus, and just get the direction to be the one you actually want to travel in. So let's see if that works. I haven't tried this at all, so I'm just guessing. Yeah, we get kick. It's immediately loads more fun. I don't know why. It just makes your thing feel like, makes your gun feel that much more powerful, even though it's doing the same amount of damage and whatever. We have a bit of a spawning problem because we only have one enemy, and he's only spawning. He only spawns when he dies, and so there's only ever one, and our room is enormous. I like that our room is enormous though. So that's good. I might actually increase it a bit. I didn't think that was as much as I would like. So we could make it 10. If it was 10, then while you're holding down fire, you would be moving as fast backwards as you would if you were actually pressing a direction key to go backwards. Because 10 is our speed. Is that too much? Nah, let's do it. It'll be fun. So that is simple enough, and our game feels better, and that's cool. But before we go too much further, we should sort out our timings, because all of our things, currently all of our speeds are dependent on the room speed. Because like I say, step runs every frame, and there are currently 30 frames in a second, because our room speed is 30. That's just the default, and we haven't changed it. So this is getting executed 30 times a second. But if we increase our room speed to 60, I'll just do it and show you. What do you think will happen? Everything will go twice as fast, because now we're executing our step twice as often. In any given second, we're executing it 60 times. So that that my speed equals 10 thing, we're adding 10 onto our position. Now we're adding 10 onto position every 60 times a second, and that means we're going at 600 pixels a second instead of 300 pixels a second. So look, we're way faster. It actually feels pretty good, I have to say. The reason, so firstly we want to increase the room speed just because 60 FPS is nicer, particularly in 2D games. I think this is kind of great. I think maybe this should be the primary method of movement. Maybe you should only be able to move by firing. That's kind of how the game Osmos works, if you load that. Here he is. Let's kill him. Oh no, we pushed ourselves too far. Oh, that's interesting. Where's he gone? Has he actually gone off the edge of the screen, or have we killed him? Probably just killed him. He should bounce off the edge of the screen. We currently do go off the edge of the screen, and I'll fix that in a minute. Anyway, that's what 60 FPS looks like, and it's good. And I like how fast we're firing, I like how fast the bullets are travelling, but our movement speed is too fast now, it's kind of a bit nuts. So if we wanted our movement speed to be the same as it was, we could just halve it, we could say 5, and then that would work out to be the same. But again, we're dependent on the room speed, and that means if we wanted to change that later, we'd have to change all our speeds in the whole game. And also, if someone happens to play this and their computer can't quite keep up with 60 FPS, we might want to do some trickery later where we have the game run at a slower frame rate, so that will compensate for that. Because otherwise, if you run a 60 FPS game and your computer can only cope with 30 FPS, everything will run at half the speed, and so the game itself will be different. It'll be easier for one thing, like it'll be effectively running in slow motion. So that's something you might want to avoid, and it's good to be ready for that now. So in other words, we want to change our game so that all of our speeds are not in pixels per step, but they're in pixels per second. And as I said just then, to explain the difference in speed, we used to be going 10 pixels every step. In fact, we still are going 10 pixels every step at the moment. And previously, at 30 steps a second, that meant 300 pixels a second. And now we're going at 600 pixels a second because we're doing it 60 times a second, and we don't want to be. We want to be going at 300 pixels a second. So how do we write 300 pixels a second, taking into account the room speed? We just write 300, that's how many pixels per second we want, divided by the room speed. So you can check that that's right, because what if our room speed was 30, as it used to be? Then we'd have 300 divided by 30, that equals 10. Right? You don't need to do any particularly advanced maths. Hopefully you can just see it intuitively that's right. So now we need to go through and change all our other room speeds. And we're not going to have to, that bit of multiplication you don't have to worry about, because from now on we will just think in pixels per second. That will be our new standard. You'll get a sense of what 300 pixels a second means. And our bullet speed, see if you can guess what this would be. The old one used to be 10, and that went to 300. This one is 20, so it's going to go to 600. Although actually that was, them going at double speed was pretty good. Maybe we'll, oh no, sorry, actually, no, we're going to keep it at 600, because slower bullets, although you might want to think that bullets should just go as fast as possible, they do make nicer patterns. There are some advantages to them being slow. And our kick, again, this is why we're doing it now, because it's going to be relevant to almost every number we type. Our kick is also dependent on this, because it's also a thing that happens every, actually it happens every bullet we fire, so it's kind of arguable whether we should change this, but I think we should. So it used to be 10 pixels per step, and now we want it to be 300 divided by room speed. Exactly the same as the walking. And that's all of the stuff on the player, but remember also our enemy has his own speed, and that's defined in his create event, so we're going to edit that. And his speed is currently 3, so we want it to be effectively 3 times. I'm not gonna do that. We're going to divide it by room speed. Room speed would have been 30. What number divided by 30 is 3? 90 is. Again, don't worry if you don't follow the maths. You'll just get a sense that you'll just try a number there and it will feel wrong if it's wrong, and you'll change it until it's right. It's not like 3 was the perfect number for that. You can just guess. So this should be running smoothly, but with mostly our old speeds. So yeah, that feels like our old movement, but it does feel nicer already. It actually, weirdly, it almost feels like it's got a bit of acceleration to it. It hasn't. But, and then we get kick. That's awesome. And yeah, so look at the bullet patterns now. It's running at a faster frame rate. We're firing twice as often. That has changed. The game actually has changed because of this. And we could adjust that, but I'm not going to, because firing more is better. I like the infinite firing rate. I know a lot of you have obviously want to do slower firing weapons and different types of weapons and stuff, and have gone off and figured that out for yourself. I will cover that soon, but for now it's simpler just to have like, let's fire just every frame, because then you get loads of bullets and you get these cool patterns. And with the kick as well, it's kind of fun to just experiment with this stuff and think about, well, what if this was the game? What if spraying a trail of bullets was how you moved around? That's kind of fun. Yes, I did say we would make sure the player can't go off screen. That's totally unrelated to what we just did, but it's a very, very simple fix. Let's put it in the movement code. So in the section, we won't make a whole new section for it, I don't think. I suppose we could, but it doesn't matter. If we want the player to stay within the room, what does that mean in GameMaker terms? It means if our x-coordinate goes less than 0, we don't want our x-coordinate to be less than 0, we want it to be 0. If you try and move beyond the left edge of the screen, we want to stop you and move you to the left edge of the screen. So where we write that is if x less than 0. We can start doing these things in line if we understand them well. So once you've done that curly bracket, it doesn't matter where the next line of code comes. It can be on the same line or it can be on a new line. And we'll just do that. So that's all on one line there. The open brace and the closed brace are all on one line. If you wanted to do multiple lines, obviously it's better to lay them out and actually do new lines. But for something very simple that's dealing with stuff we totally understand, I think we're okay with that. And so what about y? Well, I probably want to do exactly the same thing for y, right? If y is less than 0, make y 0. We're doing this after the movement code. In fact, yeah, let's we've got a bug already, right? We haven't finished writing this code, but when we have, we will be checking it before we do the kick. The kick happens down here, so the kick could push us out of the room, and that wouldn't really be a problem. It would be fixed the very next frame. It wouldn't actually be a proper bug, but it's good practice just to say, this thing, we will give it a heading, because I'm realising it's more important than I gave it credit for. Stay inside the room. That's a big fundamental thing. We want that to happen just, want it to be an absolute hard and fast rule, regardless of how fast you're travelling and what else affects you. Even if you get hit by a truck. Getting hit by vehicles is the theme today. Even if that happened, we wouldn't want you to get knocked out of the room. We want you to stay in the room, because if you're not in the room, you can't see yourself, and that's a bad thing. So because this is so important, we're going to put it at the bottom, because that means no matter what else happens up here, we're going to override it if it's broken this rule. So here we've just said don't go less than 0 on x and don't go less than 0 on y. Remember, y equals 0 is at the top. And it's very similar for the other edges of the room. It's if x, we want to know if you've gone off the other edge of the room. So it's the room width we care about, and we want to know if you've gone greater than the room width. And if you've gone greater than room width, then x equals room width. What the fuck? That didn't copy. Copy that and paste it, yes. And in fact, we will copy and paste that whole thing, because the y is going to be more similar to this. Y greater than room height, obviously. Then y equals room height. So that's just 4 lines, very simple to understand, hopefully, and we're going to leave that right at the bottom because we want it to always override everything else. If we did have some rule we thought was more important than this, we can put it lower down. That, for the most part, we'll be trying to make sure these bits of code don't interfere with each other, but things like your position, there are always going to be loads of things that affect your position, and so it's quite nice to have all this all in one event. If you're wondering why, for example, GameMaker does have a way of, let's say okay to that because that's done. GameMaker does have a way of like adding an event for a key press. You might have noticed that it has key press and key release and stuff. So we could have done that for movement, put each bit of movement code in a different event. But then when you come to do things like, hey, did we go outside of the room, and if so, put us back in, and you put that in the step event, you wouldn't totally know, is that executing after the movement keys or is it executing before? And there'll be an answer to that, but it's not going to be intuitive and it's something you've got to remember. And so that's why I like to put everything in the step event, just so it might get big and complicated, but you can see what order these things are happening in, and you can see, oh, if we go over the room height here, then we know it's going to get corrected down here because that executes later. So we'll test this. I mean, hardly worth testing because It's not going to be super exciting. Yay, it stops us! You can just see our little eyes poking out. If we wanted to make it a bit nicer, we could not let you go below 20, or like above 20 less than the room width, so that you'd be there'd be a bit of a margin of error. I don't care about that, I don't think that's important. If the player is actually moving outside of the edge of the room, by the time you get there you know it's the edge of the room, and so the fact that you're not like super noticeable is okay, because you're the player. The player himself is looking at his character probably. The other thing we could do is, what about the bullets that are going outside the room? Right now we're firing loads of those, and they're all just flying off into space, and they actually are never getting deleted. They're flying out inside the room, and then they just keep on travelling pretty much forever. So let's actually give the bullet some code. It does need to make some decisions. We're going to add a step event, and we're going to add a bit of code. And I just copied all of that don't go outside the room code I just made, and let's see if we can do something with this. Because this is roughly what we want. We want to talk about what happens when we go outside the room, but instead of setting us back into the room, that would be weird, we want to just destroy it. So, destroy ourselves. So, we don't actually care which edge of the room we went out of, so we'll just use OR for this, and we'll say if x is less than 0, or y is less than 0, or x is greater than room width, or y, oops, just delete it, y is greater than room height, then instance destroy, kill us. Life is not worth living if we're not in the room. And I will give that a heading. So in this case I didn't put it all on one line because this was pretty long, and so you want to see which bit of this is actually doing something, and it's the instance destroy bit. You can, if you get a really long complicated if statement, you can even do stuff like putting each one on a new line, so you can see that, oh, these are the terms. And GameMaker doesn't care that they're on new lines, it doesn't break the statement or anything. So that's basically fine. I think in this case it looks weirder than just having it all on one line. It's not that complicated, particularly because we kind of know what all those things are going to be. We don't need to read them individually. That one is not worth testing, because what's it going to do? We won't be able to tell that it's happening. And we weren't hitting any performance problems from excess bullets, but it's something we know we've got to do, so we might as well do it now. So that's all been pretty basic stuff. Let's do... let's add some sounds. Let's add maybe just one sound for the bullet, just to show you how you do that. And GameMaker gives you ways to make objects and write scripts and create sprites. It doesn't give you, as far as I know, any way to actually create a sound from scratch, so you're going to have to get it from somewhere else. And the thing I recommend for that is a tool by Ink Repair called BFXer. So this is the URL you need, bfxer.net. And it's just a web page, and it's got all these billions of options. Billions, easily billions, I would say. And you can just click, like, randomize. It'll make a weird siren. Just click randomize again, and then you got a totally different thing. That was kind of a dull thud. Actually, that one was quite good. If you want to hear it again, you could play over here. Could be like an impact noise. If you kind of like something, but you want something a bit different, but you're not quite sure how. I mean, you could tweak these sliders, but there's so many of them. You can click mutation, and then it, in theory, takes the same sound and just changes it slightly. I hope you're hearing this, by the way. I haven't actually checked whether the sound coming out of my computer is coming up on the thing. If not, it's going to be a surreal video. You're just going to see my face doing things. So earlier I was clicking randomize on this, and I think number 5 was good. Yeah, number 5, that's nice. So now I'm going to click export WAV. I hope this is going to work. And we're not going to put it in my Christmas photos folder. We're going to put it in, let's just put it in this GameMaker folder. I would call that let's try that as the bullet sound. I think it's going to be excessive because it's a bit, even though it's quite short, it's probably a bit much for our very rapid fire gun. But we'll give it a go and see if it destroys the earth, which it could do. So now that we've got the sound, we've made it in BFXO and we downloaded it on our computer. We right click on sounds here and say create sound. And it's got a little file option here, so you click on that. And we're going to go to, what the fuck is happening here? Desktop. Find wherever we put it in here. Shoot.wav. Let's click play there to see if it's working. Yep. And so, we're going to give it a name. Tempting to start it with an S, isn't it? But we already used S for sprite, so I always start audio with an A. A shoot is the name we'll give it. And then we click the big green tick. And now, actually getting it to play is simple. Picking the right sound is hard. Getting it to play is simple. So here's our code for firing, and everything within this thing is for firing one bullet. So at the end of it, we'll say, I think it's audio sound play. No, it's not. It's audio play sound. Yes. And we open brackets. It tells us down the bottom what it wants. It wants the ID of the sound. It wants the priority, and it wants whether or not it should be looping. So we know the idea of the sound. It was a shoot, comma, priority, we'll just put that as 1. I don't know or care what priority is. And loops, no, we don't want it to loop. We want it to only play once. Priority, I think there's loads of sounds playing at once. The highest priority ones carry on, and the lowest priority ones might get stopped. In this case, we only have one sound, so it doesn't really make any difference. And let's just test that. Hope it's not deafening, and I hope you can hear sound. Yep. As I thought, it is a bit extreme for the rate of fire we have. So if we maintain, just on the off chance we can't hear this, it's a deafening clang. And it sounds kind of robotic because it's overlapping. It's actually not a million miles from a machine gun sound you might have in a really primitive game. And it does add something to the game. It's nothing as it is. So I think in future we will try a reduced rate of fire and some different weapons and stuff, but that is probably enough for today, so thanks for watching.